meeting to order at 6 p.m. And the first agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next agenda item is correspondence, visitors, and public comments. Do we have anybody online?
Do not.
Seeing none, we'll go to number 4, the agenda review.
I now know why the answer. I had sent Laura an email saying last meeting of the fiscal year we're going to get some financial updates. But Laura's not here, is she?
No, she's visiting family out of the country,
No, that's okay.
and she gave it last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the old dogs don't learn new tricks, and usually the last board meeting, every year we get a little idea of what we're going to look like. Thank you.
So we talked about moving the ag advisory update to 6D. And just conversation with Bonnie today that our leave request, which is 8B, we would probably look for finding going to executive session because it's fairly personal. One more members, premature public policy, but one more members at a substantial disadvantage, which is why.
Next agenda item is approval of the minutes from June 6th. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I haven't had a chance to read them, so I'd ask that you put them at the end of the meeting. I'm sorry, I should have done it under agenda review, but I'd like to read the minutes. I haven't been able to find them, and here I got them to me.
He was able to find the minutes and was reviewing that towards the end of the meeting, so he has time to read them. So, is anybody else, is everybody okay with that? Perfect, we'll move that to number, do you want to do that as 8D, Don?
Sure. I think Dan and Joanne are really going to do it. I'm just going to introduce it, right?
No, she's talking about the minutes.
Yeah, do you want me to move, will it give you enough time to read the minutes if I
Yeah.
move it to 8D?
Yes. Okay. All right. I misunderstood her. I thought she was talking about that. Thank you, Joanne.
So that'll bring us to number 6, the first reading of new required policies information.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't know if you want to screen just in case.
There's too many tabs. So this is one of the 3 policies that are listed today, and now my computer just decided to. So I'll talk while I do this. The 3 policies that are listed today are both required policies. They're newly required. The first one is fire emergency preparedness drills, and the second, access controls and visitor management. Both of those came out of this legislative session and need to be adopted by August 1st. And the third is homeless, students who are homeless, which reflects the McKinney-Vento law that's been in place for a very, very long time. But this September or October, they became mandated. So I figured since we're doing mandated policies, we would do that then. I don't know what's wrong. Very hard. Zoom. Oh, Zoom kicked me out, that's it. For some reason recently, my computer has been just turning off. For no reason. I apologize. So, the fire and emergency preparedness drill is about having options-based response drills. And I know Justine, I don't know why I called her Christine, could probably tell you a little bit more about option-based response drills, but this is why our teachers are trained with Alice or Run, Hunt, Fight, another evidence-based practice, so that students, if there is a serious threat, that students are able to run away or hide or do what makes sense in that moment and follow directions of students. This was approved by the legislature, and the language comes right out of the new statute. We've had some comments here and there. Maybe we'll change the word age to developmentally appropriate. It doesn't change the meaning of
obviously we've gone all through these in the past year or so. We have procedures in place. We just don't have a policy, or is this
the
change?
policy is now mandated. And not every school in Vermont has these kinds of drills.
I'm just saying we did, right? I mean,
We
we
did.
went through all this. We've had all this. We just need to put in a formal policy.
Yes, and there are a few things like they're requiring notice before the drill happens.
Oh, okay.
That's a change.
Yeah, we have historically notified families that day that we did a drill, so they were aware of it when kids came home. Some of that beforehand, I think some schools do it's a spectrum, so some schools do very kind of intensive active shooter drills that probably do mandate a lot of communication. Some schools, like Julie said, aren't there at all yet and don't do it at all. So this really kind of puts most all of our practices onto paper.
Does it change your procedures of what you're doing now?
Just making sure that we notify families the day prior,
Okay.
no later than the day prior.
And that's not of every kind of drill, it's just the options-based drills.
On the option based way. Yeah.
So what's the option?
The option based drill, that is for Swanton, we use Alice, which the board did approve. We did talk about the virtual online training for staff to make sure that we catch everybody that's onboarded later in the year. Our option-based response is just shying away from what we did as students, where it was crouching in the corner and lining up and turning out the lights and just kind of sitting and waiting, to options-based really basically means no one can really tell you what to do. We're going to train you in a number of different responses, and you are going to make the best decision with the information you have in the moment. So what you do in your classroom might look a little different than what you do in your classroom based on who your kids are, what you have for extra doors, where you are in proximity to the situation. So it just gives frees teachers up in the mindset of my school policy is to stay in the corner with the kids. I can leave out a back door, we can hide, we can barricade, go to another classroom to get out. We make those decisions at the moment.
So it depends on the situation.
A big part of that is information, so sharing. This is really for an active intruder situation. This is no other reason to implement this option-based response. So really a big part of that is inform. The I stands for inform is getting on the announcements and saying there's an active situation in this part of the building, and knowing that, what am I going to do based on who's in my room, who I have, and proximity of doors and all of those things.
So if we were looking for a motion for the F3,
Well, we don't for first reading.
oh, we don't need any motions.
No,
Okay.
we will look at them at our, we'll hope to adopt them at our retreat board
Gotcha.
meeting.
Okay,
So they'll be ready for the, what am I trying to say? For August 1st deadline.
so then my only comment would be, I see Christina and Chris's comment, and my experience with these mandated ones is we probably shouldn't change them, but it is a good catch. I mean, so what do we do from here? I mean, do we tell the Vermont School Board Association, because I'm sure this is from them, that
It is.
do we point it out to them and maybe they'll say good catch by Swanton or by the MVSD and we'll switch it for everybody?
Well, I certainly could, but most of the time, if we're changing something that isn't changing the nature of the policy, that's fine. You know, age
Okay.
appropriate, age versus just age, developmentally appropriate versus age is synonymous. It's just different word.
I did just comment with the age because some of the programs, like Alice is one of the more common ones, and they teach things like the counter to high school kids, because size-wise, you can teach those students by age to counter, and in Shrewsbury, you would not teach that to, K-1-3 classroom. So I didn't know if that was there too. That was just us dropping notes for our first read as well. Okay.
Close this one out. The next one is the access controls and visitor management. And this one is pretty straightforward for us because we already have access controls, meaning you can't just open the front door of any of our schools. They're locked, they're badged, you need to be buzzed in. Many of our schools have a double entry. The two exceptions in the model policy has an opportunity for exceptions that make sense. And so I put in here in our draft that the ag building, I call it the agricultural studies structure, but the barn, etc., they do lock, but it's not necessarily easy to lock it during the school day. So we talked about that needing, administrators, we talked about that needing to be open. This policy also requires that school district offices be locked. And I didn't know what the board thought of that. We do not have a double entry. It is not our building. We're not going to pay a lot of money to, harden someone else's building. It is, the public interacts with the building regularly. It's sort of important that the doors be unlocked. I listed that as a suggested exception. If the board wanted us to keep it locked at all times and keep it locked, we can do that. But that would be my preference.
Some days you need a full-time door attendant.
Well, we do have some, we have,
Yeah.
Jerry is our,
I know Jerry's good, but I
You know.
could see times when it's come up, we come in more.
yeah, we always try and make sure somebody is paying attention to the door, but
Do you feel comfortable leaving it unlocked, your staff?
we locked it during COVID and people were supposed to make appointments. But then we opened it up again. I myself am comfortable with it. I haven't had any issues in the 5 years I've been here. So there's that policy, and I'm sorry, there's so, when you're in Zoom, you've got these bars that come up. The third is students who are homeless, very much like the 504 and special education policies that it's changed for us to have as mandated policies. These are all activities in which we engage. We have homeless liaison that works with all of our schools. We do all the signage that's required. We ensure students are enrolled immediately when they're homeless. And arrange for transportation should that be needed. It is a federal law, and we follow the federal law. So this policy is telling us what federal law is and how to follow it.
Average, how many homeless kids do we have?
We, right now, I think we're in the 20s, which is fairly high for this district. My previous district, it was a much larger number. That was one of my jobs in the previous district. So it's about 20 students. So I really did not change, and there were a few comments here, mostly questions. But we wouldn't be changing anything substantive to this model policy because it is federal law. We follow it the way it's written.
Julie,
Yes.
without sharing information that should be confidential, are most of the people that you know who are homeless now, students, were they people who were living here and became homeless, or are they people who were homeless and came here?
So there's two situations. When you are the student where the family was originally living, they're the ones that make the determination on whether a student's homeless or not. So there's an LEA responsibility there, and we count students that were residing in our community at the time they experienced homelessness. So it could be a family residing in Swanton that finds themselves living in a motel in St. Albans or some other situation. And the two districts work together to provide education and transportation.
Thank you.
So that's it for that. We'll continue to take input. They'll be warned on the website, and hopefully we'll adopt them at our July 12th meeting, and then they will be posted before the deadline of August 1st. The world does not end if it's not on August 1st. We can meet that deadline, so why not?
So now we're going to do Dan Palmer's ag update.
Hi, sorry, did you say my name?
Yes, I did. I said now we're going to
You guys are
do.
still pretty choppy, so I apologize. Really quickly, last Wednesday, Don and Joanne, Richard Barwin, who is going to be the new ag department leader, and myself met to take a look at, and Laura, to kind of talk about ag and the kind of future of the ag program. And meeting lasted probably about 45 minutes longer than what we thought it was going to. Lasted quite a while, which was a good thing though. But in the end, one of the things that we wanted to have the board consider was actually forming like an ag committee at the board level. There's a lot of changes that are going to be taking place. The curriculum is going to be changing a little bit for the ag department. Just the future of kind of where it's headed. And the kind of direction of the programs. We of course going to have a new DL on there, and of course I think just helping to support the 3 newish members that are there. But right now we do have an ag advisory committee, which is made up of local professionals and other people that are on there. We're looking to kind of maybe revamp that a little bit as well. And would love some input from the board at that level. And certainly Joanne and Don, if I missed something, please feel free to chime in. But I think that's kind of what we're hoping, is that to have the board, this be kind of a board level committee that doesn't meet, it might meet once a month, once every month and a half, something along that line. So it's not an every other week or every week committee.
I think just a couple of things. Excuse me, good job there. I talked with Julie about the committee, and she said we already are the committee, right, Joanne and I?
Well, we have you as representatives on the Ag Advisory Committee. The Ag Advisory Committee, or any tech center advisory committee, is supposed to be run by the school to get input from professionals in the fields. It hasn't really run that way, so we really need to do a little bit of revamping there. But we do have some work that we want to do with the Ag program to make sure things are running the way they need to. And we did think that it would be important for there to be, even if it's for a year, until maybe a newly revamped advisory committee is developed, that there be a board group that's working with administration. Because we want to make sure that the communication in the board is really aware of what's happening. Because things, people's opinions get out there, and we want to make sure the board is really informed and knows what we're trying to do to make things really secure and viable.
I think Joanne will speak for herself, but as I sat there and discussing a lot of very great ideas, I think the program has started to head in the right direction. I think there's more to do. I was thinking, the way it first happened, talked to the former chair, somebody had requested to send a board member. I went, I asked Joanne to join us. It was pretty informal.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, bringing it before the board so everybody knows that we are there, as well as if things come up, we are responsible to come back to the board and keep you informed. But without having it be a discussion or something on the agenda, I thought, what if we wander off the ranch and the rest of you say, what do you do with that ag program? You never had any authority. So I think to bring it up, Dan did a good job. The only other thing that I would add before Joanne fills in the rest of the blanks, I think we said tonight we were going to be very brief. We just wanted to kind of say heads up. We think there's some exciting things that can happen, but on one of the August meeting agendas, we'll come back and fill in the blanks and have greater detail on where we see this committee going to move the ag program further.
And we did not make motions when appointing people to committees that we have. So if it is the will of the board, I can certainly make an adjustment to the committee document that's posted on our website.
You've heard me say this before, but I'll repeat myself. I think when you're doing something like some of the discussions we're having, some of the things that could occur over the summer, as we worked on buildings and a lot of things, it's nice to know, for the board to know that we don't know what's going to happen, but there's going to be some recommendation coming forward before you hear it down at Hannaford's or at the local post office, because some of the things we've talked about may have some visible things happening at the buildings or something. We don't know that, but it could happen. And storage and all the other stuff. So.
The other thing, I'm sorry, we also had Jason Butler there as well, as the head of buildings and grounds. So just in case any bigger purchases, that he was well aware of that as well. And I think that we're just trying to figure out the difference between, what is buildings and grounds and what's ag related and as it related to the facilities. So I think Julie said it really well, just to help increase communication with the board to make sure that everybody is informed.
So do you want you and Joanne continue going to the meetings and then we put it on the agenda to give an ag update?
I think it's just an update, Joanne, an update on the ag program. I don't know how much I don't know how much we're going to get done this summer, but if we do before we get too far into the school year, if it's impacting enrollments or supporting the staff, I don't know exactly where we're going, but if the enthusiasm we had there with Jason and Laura and our group, you're going to see some positive recommendations.
I think it'd be great starting in August to put you on for the updates. We appreciate that.
Was I hearing, Julie, were you looking for a formal motion on a committee then?
No,
Or
we
no?
didn't do that for committees,
Okay.
people just volunteered, but
Okay.
we wanted to make sure, given the discussion we had about committees,
Okay.
we wanted to make sure we talked about it and made it a little more formal by discussing it.
Julie, I don't know if other place in the meeting, but didn't we have a resignation? Is that 8C, is that the resignation that you're talking about? Because we did have a resignation in the ag program.
No,
A retirement or resignation in the ag
we
program?
don't.
The person who,
As the barn manager, not within, we have the barn manager,
okay.
but not any of the teaching staff.
No, I didn't refer to that, just, it's somebody who was employed there to manage the barn, which came on board about, I think maybe the year before you came on as superintendent.
I think I was there, I think it was MVU's last year.
Okay.
Board, yeah.
So anyway, it came up that people were spending time on weekends taking care of animals and doing a lot of work, and so we hired a barn manager. And paid them by the hour, I believe.
It's
It's a yearly stipend,
yeah.
Yearly stipend? Okay. But
yes.
we no longer have it, right?
I'm not
At the
sure.
moment, we have a barn manager, correct? We are looking to rehouse the animals for the summer,
Awesome.
and I think I'm just down to chickens.
Joanne volunteered to take the
If
call.
anybody would like 12 laying hens for the summer, please let me know.
We're gonna have 15.
Please feel free to reach out. Jen, I think I saw you raising,
No, I
nodding
already,
your head, yeah?
Sure,
No,
he has extras.
I already have one from your school that had to be rehomed.
It made its way down the walk path.
I lost my son, he has laying hens now, and he made lots of
12 of them.
12
12 of them.
That's a lot.
Yeah, 12 of them.
He's still there.
Well,
I'll
I
ask
understand.
him, let you know.
The rescue
Okay.
Alright, so on this agenda, we'll put the ag update with the other updates. Dan, feel free to leave if you want to. You don't have to stay on.
Okay. I see there's a question on there from Kimberly. I don't know if that was directed towards me or not, but
Just saw that. So let's see. Joint, because I was sharing my screen.
we had not reached out to the topic place. So I think we were just trying to find, local farmers or such that might be interested in taking them. But that's certainly a good idea. We can take a look at that. All right, thank you.
Dan, before you leave, I just wanted to give you my sympathies on the Yankees.
Thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. I've had lots of people reaching out.
I bet you have.
Their deepest sympathies, but yes. And in case people hadn't said, the senior walk went really, really well. If you saw the messenger, there's 107 photos in the messenger related to it. And the next board report, there'll be a link to it if you haven't seen them, but just so people are aware, it went really, really well.
Well organized, well organized.
Yep. Hats off to the elementary school principals for putting on a great time for the kids. So that was excellent.
Good to hear.
Man.
Thank you, Dan. Next agenda item is presentation and discussion items, end of the year data, student, first one is the student academics continuous program.
Alright, so as promised, here is our end of year data and reporting to you and talking about the senior walk. This is actually a picture I took in Swanton when the graduates came through, and it was just a wonderful experience. Alright, I'm just going to request that people hold their questions till the end because I think this year we've been able to provide a lot more comprehensive data based on our new data management system. So I think a lot of your questions will probably be answered in the slides, but we will definitely take questions at the end. So the objectives really for today's presentation is to provide you with some end-of-year data and identify some trends, and also for us as a district to really reflect on that data. Because as you see from that quote, we don't really learn from our experience, we learn from reflecting on that experience. And that I think is a critical part of really looking at data and thinking about what worked, what didn't work, what can we change, and how can we do things even better. Just as a quick review, this is our continuous improvement planning process. We start with making a plan, and then we implement the strategies we outlined in our plan. We do some assessment, we analyze data, and then we really reflect on that data to help us again review what happened and then make a plan for the next year. So just a reminder that the continuous improvement plan is a guiding document that we have in place at the beginning of the year to really help guide what actions we are going to take to meet our goals. And based on the data collected from our schools this year, we have 3 different goals. We had safe and healthy schools, we had academic achievement, and then attendance, engagement, and truancy.
Kosha, can you remind people about the continuous improvement plan and its in terms of Vermont statute that it's?
Yeah, so one change that was made by the Agency of Ed last year is instead of having a plan every year, they are asking us to write a plan for 2 years. We've kind of identified it as 1 year for this year, but then based on our data from this year, we can say we're going to continue with the same goals for another year if we haven't met them. So even though it says 1 year, the new guidance is to keep it for 2 years till you've met your goals. Thanks for the reminder. So our first goal was really in safe and healthy schools. We wanted to have 100% of our MVSD staff receive professional development and how do you integrate social emotional learning into academics. And I kind of highlighted to show you what we've accomplished and what we've made progress on. So that professional development was provided to all staff at the beginning of the year during our August in-service. And then we said we'll do this by developing and implementing a staff training program to build capacity. We have done some of that, but it's not done yet. So we are going to continue providing professional development in the area of integrating social emotional learning. And then the second one, we had said we would create a multi-tiered system of supports to respond to students' behavior and social emotional learning needs. And we are in the process of drafting the 3 tiers, that what happens when a student begins to show some kind of needs, and then what happens when their needs become more intensive. So we are in progress on those 2. We said we are going to measure this by tracking attendance, and we have done that. All our staff was required to attend, and all our principals keep track of who's there and who isn't there, so we've done that. Having reflective discussions during staff meetings, and in all our buildings, I know the principals have focused at least 1 monthly meeting on social emotional development, and so those reflective discussions are happening, but we are not done yet. We are going to keep working on that. And then we were going to collect some walkthrough and survey data to gather data on implementation. We actually worked with our consultant, Corey Smith, on developing a walkthrough tool this year, and our teachers did a phenomenal job of developing that. So the implementation of that is going to happen next year. And so Corey Smith, our consultant, will come in and do some training with our SEL team members, administrators, district office staff on when you do these walkthroughs, how do you collect data and gather evidence on that implementation piece. And then in terms of what we used, we did have, as I said, a SEL consultant, and she provided professional development to all our staff, to our SEL team members, as well as to administrators. And we provided time and training for collaboration and we also provided funding to pay for this professional development to take place. Our second goal, and we'll spend some time on this one because I know that's of interest to most people. Our second goal was really academic achievement. As directed by the board, we wanted to make sure that we were seeing growth from last spring to this spring. So our goal was really to increase reading proficiency in the district from 41 to 50%, and in math from 52 to 60%. And we are showing progress in reading. We had a little bit slight reduction in math, and I'll show you more data on that. And explain why we are seeing that. We are going to continue to really work on improving academic achievement by high quality instruction. We keep working on that and developing our MTSS system. So once students start showing some kind of academic struggles, what do we do to help support those students? We measured this by progress monitoring all through the school year using STAR 360 and other diagnostic tools. And I think all our schools have done a really good job with that. And then pre-K uses TS Gold to monitor student progress. In terms of what we invested, we had administrators and coaches were providing leadership, staff was setting goals, and we provided time during in-service as well as during professional learning community meetings for teachers to look at their data on a continuous basis as well as to respond to that data. So we are providing time as well as opportunity for that. So first I'm going to report to you on our pre-K data. As I mentioned, TS Gold is the system by which data is collected, and Wendy Cunningham, our ECP coordinator, gave me this information. So in fall, you can see we had students 64% in social emotional, language was 70%, literacy was 65%, and math was 55%. And in spring, you can see the growth over the year that we had between 83 and 86% of our pre-K students achieving those developmental goals for them. This one, I just wanted to do a quick review of proficiency. When we are defining what proficiency means on our STAR assessment, we are considering all students who are at the 50th percentile or above as compared to their peers across the nation as proficient. We've actually set our bar higher than what is our national norm. The national norm says 40th percentile. We chose 50th percentile because our coaches felt that even students who were between the 40th and 50th percentile, they wanted to make sure that we were paying attention to those students, because although they are more likely to meet end of year grade level benchmarks, we still wanted to make sure that they were being monitored. And while we are reporting on achievement, like whether the student did meet the grade level standards, we also are monitoring growth. So we want to make sure that all our students are growing, no matter where they are on that scale, and that we are continuing to support students in terms of their various needs. This is our math data for the year, and I've given you by school, and you can see that all schools in the district made improvements in proficiency from fall to spring. We also saw that the growth in percentage of proficiency was between 1 and 13%. And overall math proficiency in the district, grades 1 through 9, increased from 42% to 50%. So we didn't quite get to our CIP goal of 60%, but we are showing growth over the year.
Coach, I think it's important to say just about that last chart that the winter to spring flip is when that particular assessment ratchets up the expectations.
Yes.
So we would certainly we would like to be making more progress than what you see, but there is more progress than what's reflected just in those numbers.
The bar increases through the year.
Yes.
So that by the end of the year, the students are expected to be performing at a higher level of standard or meeting the standard at a standards are different. Some of them are like a year-long standard and some are progressive. But the bar increases through the year. I think
So the
it's
fall to winter doesn't jump to the degree that the winter to spring jumps. So we do typically see less of a winter to spring increase than a fall to winter increase.
Thank you for that. Here you can see our math proficiency by grade level, and we can see that grades 1, 2, and 3 reached our goal of 60% proficiency. We saw growth of between 10 to 15% from fall to spring, which was excellent. And then grade 6 made less than 5% growth, but they did. And then we had some mixed results in grades 7 through 9. But overall, we are seeing improvement in math proficiency. This one, what I wanted to show you in this is when we look at our data, we look at which were the students who were at or above proficiency, who were the students who were nearly there, so they haven't quite met the benchmark for that particular assessment period, but they're almost there. And then below are our students who really need urgent intervention intensively. And what we are seeing as a trend is a lot of positive trends that students who were in the below category in fall, we are seeing those numbers going down. So we are starting to see movement of students who were way below grade level moving into the nearly meets category. And I think that is really, really a positive result. It shows us that we are making a difference in the interventions we are providing to these students who are really struggling. And there was a significant change in grades 8 and 9. There was about a 10% difference, which is huge. So the evidence-based interventions that our interventionists are using are now really helping those students start moving towards grade level proficiency. So we are excited to see that those students who were really in the below category are starting to move towards the nearly meets category.
Well, and Coach, I wonder if this is the time to point out that we started the new math program in grade 7
Yes.
and up. And
Yeah.
you can see that in this year, in the first year of implementation, we did move students from the below to nearly into above. So that's pretty hopeful data. It's 1 year, but it is hopeful data.
Absolutely. Thanks. And then here is our reading data for the district, and all schools again made improvements in proficiency from fall to spring. The growth in percentage of proficiency was between 6 and 22%, which was great. And overall reading proficiency in the district, grades 2 through 9, increased from 34% to 43%. So again, we didn't meet our 50% benchmark that we had set for ourselves, but we are definitely seeing movement in the positive direction. This is again your reading data by grade level. And again, you can see kindergarten and grade 3 reached our goal of 50%. Proficiency, grades 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, and 9 increased from 7 to 16% in proficiency, and grade 6 and 7 had an insignificant decrease of like 1%. So we didn't quite see the growth that we wanted to see. But in 9th grade, you can see from fall to spring, they went from 25% to 32%. This is similar to what I showed you in math. We are again seeing a positive trend with our students who were below proficiency in fall and needing urgent intensive intervention. We are starting to see a lot of movement. We are seeing that the kids who were in that category are moving towards proficiency. So this again indicates that the interventions we are providing in reading are also having a positive impact on students. And this is the data that the board really wanted to see, like what is happening between spring of 2022 and spring of 2023. And again, you can see in math, we were at 52% last spring, and we are at 50% this spring. One of the things, as Julie mentioned, is we adopted a new math program in grades 7 through 12. And sometimes when you adopt a new program, you do see some fluctuation in your data because teachers are learning a new program, and it takes them sometimes 3 to 4 years to really get good at that program. In reading, we saw a change from last spring. We had 41%. It went up to 43% this spring.
The real detail for us and the team of coaches and administrators is really the grade level data and the school level data, where you look at the trends of moving those below students into nearly, et cetera. When you do the big conglomerate, it's harder to see the change, so that's why we showed you the other data as well.
And our third goal was really to increase attendance of students who had been identified as being at either low, moderate, or high risk for becoming chronically truant. And we said we were going to do that by really closely monitoring the days they were absent and developing a multi-tiered system of support. And we have been doing that. This data is showing us, why I'm showing you this, I know Julie did a detailed report on this, is we are now able to see the impact of chronic absenteeism on academics. And so here you can see in the first column, it's 10 days. We had 67% of our students last year missing 10 days. This year it was 46%, but that's still 810 students in our district who missed at least 10 days of school. And then from the 810, 293 went on to miss 20 days of school. Out of that, 99 missed 30 days. And then out of those 99, 50 missed 40 days. So when you start seeing this kind of chronic absenteeism, it has a huge impact on academic data. And this is again, Julie went through this with you, but this is just showing you by school what we were seeing. And the critical data I wanted you to look at is in the 20-day column. You can see when in the elementary schools, between the 10 and 20 days, we go down to between 8 and 14% absenteeism, but at the middle and high school, we are seeing 20 to 22% missing 20 days or more. So we start seeing a real difference in middle and high school absenteeism when we get to that 20-day mark. And what we were able to extract this time was from our new data management system, EduClimber. I asked Rusty Gregory, who's our data manager, I really wanted to see the impact of chronic absenteeism on academics. And what you see in those graphs is the top left one is 10 days, then one on the right top is 20 days, then 30 days and 40 days. And the green shows proficiency. So you can see clearly as kids are missing more and more days of school, it's having a huge impact. And this is showing you the math data. And then the next one is going to show you the reading data. And we are seeing overall that there's a big impact on reading when kids start becoming chronically absent. So this was really good information for us to look at as we are developing our multi-tiered systems of support. Before we start providing academic interventions, if chronic absenteeism is a big issue with that student, we've really got to intervene there, make sure that we are figuring out what those barriers are for why those students are not coming to school, what might be the family's issues that we can help support before we can really impact their academics. And this is showing you behavior referrals. We had a lot of behavior challenges this year. In the elementary schools, the top 5 reasons you can see, it was a lot of physical aggression, disruption, defiance, and those kind of things. In the middle and high school, 30% of their referrals were for skipping class. So what this data is really showing us is that even when students are in the building, if they're skipping class, again, that's having a huge impact on their academic learning. Just wanted to give you, because this is one of the areas we are supposed to report to the Agency of Education. We are supposed to keep track of our historically marginalized students, and this was a question that was asked. So currently, this is based on data given by Wendy, who is our homeless liaison. We saw a 67% increase in the number of students identified as homeless. So we had 9 students last year. This year it's up to 15 students. Per our ELL data, which is English language learners, we have 12 students currently, and since last year we are really struggling to hire an ELL teacher. So Tanya, who manages our ELL students, has been using a consulting model. So the consultant works with classroom teachers and administrators to provide strategies that can be used. And then students with special needs is another subgroup that we are supposed to really look at closely. And we are 19.39% of our students at MVSD are identified as students with special needs. This is higher than the state average based on the state's percentage of from 2021, 22, it's 18%. And of these students, we had 39% girls and 61% boys. This is in very much the trend nationally as well as in our district. And currently we have 6 special educator openings. So those are positions that are really getting challenging to fill right now. So just to conclude, academic instruction and intervention is positively impacting our students who are below proficiency. Chronic absenteeism is having a major impact on academic achievement. We are also seeing behavior as impacting student learning. And then at the middle and high school, as I mentioned before, even when students are in school, many of them skip class, and that is also impacting student achievement. So this is now the reflection piece, right? We've looked at all our data and what are we going to do about it based on that. So I wanted to give you some action steps that we are currently working on. Under our social emotional learning and behavior, Corey Smith, who's been our consultant providing PD, is going to do some job in embedded coaching with 10 staff. We are currently recruiting people who will sign on to do a year-long job embedded coaching with her. She will work with them on an individual goal and then help them through the year in terms of moving towards their goal. We have an evidence-based program called Developmental Designs, which we provide professional development for our new middle school teachers. In addition to that, MVU is also going to provide developmental designs coaching for middle school teachers who've already had that professional development before, but this time it will be more on the coaching level. Tanya has been working with a team from MVU to develop a behavior matrix and really build those tiered systems of support. Mental health services are being provided to our students through school counseling and art therapy. And then, as I heard from Celine recently, Jeff is working with them to revive the Stay in School program that they had some years ago to really help with those students who are becoming chronically absent and really seeing what we can do to help them stay in school. In terms of academics, we are continuing to provide data days for deep dive into our data. We have district CIP team meetings. We are monitoring student data using EduClimber, continuing with our reading and math screening, progress monitoring. And just today, we launched our new math program at the elementary schools with a full day of the training, and I was there for all the sessions. I think it's been really well received by our teachers. They really like the new math program. And one of the trainers who came in, he's himself a fourth grade teacher. He's been implementing this program for 2 years, and he said he's seen tremendous gains after 2 years. So I think that's going to be really beneficial. And in the meanwhile, the literacy team and myself have started to research reading programs that are out there that we can possibly adopt next year. So we've so far visited schools in Maple Run, we visited schools in Grand Isle to see different reading programs that have been adopted by them, and we are going to continue to do some research and hopefully have a decision by spring of 2024. In terms of attendance and engagement, as I mentioned, we have now a district level MTSS attendance team, and Justina and Julie and I'm on it. We are really looking at what we can do to help support that. And as part of our discussion this year, when we realized that chronic absenteeism is definitely an issue that's impacting our students, we have decided to launch a year-long PR campaign around how critical attendance is. So we work with JR, and every month we are going to release a short video, like a minute or two, that will be sent out by principals through their weekly memos to parents and families, as well as through Classroom Dojo or whatever system they're using to communicate, and really bringing that message that every day your child is in school is important, that they be there. So that's the plan for next year. In addition, as I said, we are really creating those systems of support. And what we are finding is that when the students hit 10 days absent, we've got to catch them before they get to the 20 days. And we've got to put some supports in place and figure out what is it that the family has in terms of needs, and what might be some barriers that we can help to alleviate some of those. We are also increasing our place-based outdoor education. You had the opportunity to see Kurt Valenta and see how he's really helped bring that outdoor ed, as well as the place-based learning. And our plan for next year is we have a new program leader at MVU for our alternate program called Connect, and Kurt is going to be mentoring him to really think about how we can take those students into the outdoors to teach them the curriculum in a way that might be more conducive to their learning.
And you will see this format in fall. The continuous improvement plan is approved by the board. These are the 3 goals for the continuous improvement plan, one of which is the district goal around academics, and they're tied together. But you will see this again in the fall when you approve the second version next year of the continuous improvement plan.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to really review this in fall and then make adjustments in our continuous improvement plan so that we have a focus for next year. And so, questions, if anyone has questions.
Curiosity questions. When do you do the winter testing? What is it, like November?
January.
Okay, it's in January.
Yeah. So our first is, and that's a good question. So for our little students, we want to test them as soon as they come in September to see where the baseline is. Whereas we just had our meeting with all the coaches last week, and at the middle and high school, based on new research, they actually want to do it later in October. So they want to do 4 to 6 weeks of instruction before they then measure the impact of that. So we are going to adjust that based on what we need to find out from our little guys and what we need to really find out from our middle and high school.
Well, I see we are unable to hire an ELL. Is that just because applicants, or what?
Absolutely, it's not. It's a shortage area.
Okay.
It's not a full-time job, but we have in the past made it full-time and had the person do language instruction in the past or something. But we had someone for a few years, they left, we interviewed many people, but it wasn't right.
And I'm just kind of curious, is it usually always, what is the language of the that makes it, what is their native language? What is their?
That's not relevant to the ELL license. So you get ELL teachers that are native speakers of another language frequently. Sometimes that's not the case.
I'm about our students though.
Right. Our students can come, I taught in Missisquoi, so we had students with lots of languages.
Right, but.
It really is about how they learn English rather than a translator. So I'm not an expert in ELL, although I taught lots of kids. But it really isn't about that.
I get when it's like, when you go to a soccer game, it's incredible. I don't know how the kids communicate, but there's like 5 different languages at least.
Soccer is an international
Right,
language.
but what I'm asking is, what do we have 12 students? Do we know what their native language is? Are they all?
Many of them are Spanish.
That's what I was
think
wondering.
you have, is it Filipino? Or I think in Highgate there are some students.
Like the vast majority, I'm assuming is
It's Spanish right now.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's what I was wondering. And then I look at that. To me, everything looked good attendance-wise compared to last year. I mean, it's not good, but significant improvements from last year. And almost everything across the board was cut in half. It seems like,
Yes.
which is good, as far as I can see. And then the other question I had, I can't remember. That's awful. Oh, what's the punishment for skipping class? I'm a punishment person. I know that's old school. We're not supposed to have punishment.
Say that word anymore.
That's right. So
School for
what
a day,
is-
that really helps them.
Well, that becomes the issue, is skipping class. And, MVU has a particular structural problem because you've got that theater.
Yeah.
People love to be on the move. But giving kids time out of school for skipping class is sort of counterproductive. So it really is about processing and getting kids where they need to be. But when you talk about students who are chronically skipping, that's a big question that we're starting to have conversation about. We really need to build something that's not an alternative school. We have our own alternative program. We have some other more hands-on learning programs that, again, that's why we talk about outdoor education, because for some kids it's about some hook, right? They want to be outside, they want to work with their hands. But for some kids, they just don't want to be in school. So we want to look at some other programs we can build in the school for maybe some short-term work that we can do with students, whether it's behavior or whether it's skipping, which is a behavior. So that's work we're engaged in. Chris and I were just talking about it today.
And based on what I heard from Steve Messier, a lot of them are skipping class because their teachers aren't there. So, we are seeing definite improvement in attendance, but I think teachers being out is still an issue.
Yeah.
And what happens is, because there's a lack of substitutes, they get a study hall. So it's like, why should I go, right? So that's when they wander around the building because they don't want to go to a study hall. So we definitely, as Julie said, are aware of these things, and I know that the MVU administration is working on those kind of things. But teacher absenteeism continues to be a challenge, and it's much better, definitely, than last year. But I think, when the students know that their teacher's not there, they really don't want to be there. And then, of course, some of the students are skipping class for other reasons also. There is still a very high need for them to socialize with other kids, and so they make appointments to meet people in the bathroom or, things like that. We did see as part of the pandemic, because for so long they were away from their peers, that they now have a high need to be with peers. So that might be another issue. And then, so all these things they are very much aware of. And as Julie said, really trying to build systems that can then help to alleviate some of these issues.
I want to come back to the first one, I think it was safety.
Yeah.
I think it indicated that there was a funding model for those who had hired a consultant.
Yes.
Is that like, you did it this year and it'll be done again next year
Yes.
for the new people or for everybody?
So the consultant is going to be working with 10 teachers from our district to do intensive coaching, job embedded coaching. She's also going to come in person and do a training with the SEL team members and administrators and district level folks to really help us to do walkthroughs and really learn about how do you gather evidence of implementation. So that all is definitely continuing. And then we have monthly SEL meetings, which next year Tanya and I are going to be running to really talk about like creating some model lesson plans, how do you integrate social emotional learning into your content and things like that. But yes, we are hiring a consultant to do that coaching next
And
year.
is that ESSER funded?
So this year it was ARPESA funded, and for the next year we have moved that into our consolidated federal grant, because that is a grant that recurs every year. So as Laura has been so, sort of giving us guidance around avoiding that fiscal cliff, we've started shifting some of our funding from ARPESA into the consolidated federal grant, so that when that money runs out, we will still have those things in place.
And that's a question that I'll probably ask a lot, other people will too, because it seems like it's an essential thing we do.
Absolutely.
But when the ESSER money is gone,
Yeah.
we have to find a way to either reduce or make it effective, because we can't just say, well, the money's gone, so we ain't gonna do that.
Right. And luckily, through our consolidated federal grant, we have Title IIA funds, which are for professional development, and we also have Title IVA funds, which can be used for social and emotional learning. So we leverage those funds to continue with any kind of initiatives that we have in place.
And the last one is maybe for Chris. Are you optimistic you're gonna be fully staffed in special ed come August?
I'm optimistic that we will continue our aggressive search for special educators, and that we have a backup plan in the event that we're not able to fill those. So we had some difficulty filling special ed positions for the current year. We created a plan to have academic specialist positions. So those are licensed teachers that came in, and their role was to provide the direct services under the direction of a case manager. So we haven't had applicants for our special ed positions for a while, and we're not the only ones. You heard that earlier that we have 6 positions in the district. So if we don't fill them, I'm confident that we have a good backup plan for kids.
Yeah, thank you. The second part of your answer is really what I was looking for, because I would bet most superintendents would say they have vacancies in special ed right now.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The few that I might work with, they're desperate. So the backup plan, and I imagine that Franklin will have a backup plan, and Highgate will have a backup plan.
Oh, yes.
Maybe did Highgate, anyway, yeah, it's the backup plan that's key, because probably not gonna fill them.
What's really nice is that we do a lot of sharing of resources, and with the change in special ed law and how children are identified with specific learning disabilities, for example, we've created a team across the district, so, we have to share expertise, and we're able to do that.
So Kosha, so how are our students doing?
I think given the circumstances, we are seeing progress, and what our coaches are most excited by is we are really moving those kids who were at the below level into the nearly level. So our students with the most needs are showing growth, and that's what they're really, really excited by. We haven't got the kids who we wanted to move to proficiency as much, but we are seeing a positive movement. And given that a lot of students have missed school, teachers are being out, all those situations, I think we are doing pretty well. And I'm basing it just not on our data, just hearing what's happening regionally. We are seeing similar challenges, and I am really, really hopeful that this new math program is going to give teachers the resources they need to help their students show growth. And as I said, we are investigating a new reading program that we can adopt, which will give more consistency, especially to our K1, where we really need to have strong foundational skills in reading and writing. So given what we've gone through, I think we are seeing the after effects of the pandemic, even though we aren't having classroom closures and those kind of things. There are definite effects, but I'm pretty hopeful that with our new programs and continued monitoring of students, we are also going to be working on really revamping our educational support team, EST procedures. And I think that teachers are becoming really good at identifying specifically what students need and then intervening. We are hearing a lot of research now on you've got to get very specific about what skills are missing and teach to those skills. So I think we are getting better at figuring out what kids need.
So then, from our level, from like the board level, what are the biggest things that you need support with, or we can help with to like continue in like the right track? Because the one thing that I looked at one of the slides, and if you just isolate the below column, it increases year after year, the percentage in that column.
Absolutely.
So it's like each year that progresses, there's more students who are falling behind.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a really good observation. And that's why we know that pre-K, K1 are the years where we've got to lay those really strong foundational skills. We are seeing a lot of kids coming in with very low language, and so it's becoming really more important for us to focus on those early years. So we are intensifying our foundations, which is our phonics program. This year we invested a lot of money, I would say 50,000 on buying decodable books, which now research is showing that reading those books really helps students to master those early patterns in language and reading. So we are investing a lot of money, and we are doing a lot of research on what is going to help with those early foundational skills. Because you're right, the more we have gaps in the early years, those gaps get bigger and bigger and bigger as they go up the grade.
It's getting bigger, and the kids, maybe they make a year's progress like this, but the standards don't look like this, and the gap just gets larger and larger. So it is about closing those gaps. It doesn't mean we stop working very hard to close gaps, but it's harder to close a gap with an 8th grader than it is a 2nd grader. And that's a national challenge. That's why we talk about evidence-based programming, especially with so many new teachers. It's important that we have materials that are research-based rather than just created.
And how does our data compare to like Maple Run or like some of the other counties down like further south in Chittenden County?
Yeah, so I think Maple Run had reported in the paper that they had very, very low literacy rates, and so they adopted a new reading program, and they had it piloted last year, and this year they have started now going into full implementation. When I talked to their curriculum director, they still didn't have data to show that evidence of change. But I did talk to the Grand Isle curriculum director. They adopted another reading program, and they are starting to see huge growth. Especially, she showed me some data on students with special needs. So I think it's hopeful. A lot of the new reading programs have, they've consulted with reading researchers to go through their program, help them develop it. So it's becoming, I think, our job. We are really looking at 6 different reading programs that Ed Reports, which is like a national organization. They go through all these different programs and they give you ratings and they tell you which ones are meeting all the standards as required by the Common Core. And from those 6 programs, one of the reasons that those are considered the top is because they're called knowledge building programs. So they're not just teaching kids how to read and write, but they're actually building background knowledge. So they have a lot of informational text and nonfiction. And when I visited the classroom in Grand Isle, they had decodable books, which are, the pattern books for kids, but they were all nonfiction. So for example, I was reading with a first grader and the book was on Australia. So even though they might be learning the, EA pattern, they're also gaining knowledge of different things. They had one book which was on, the famous painting of George Washington crossing over the Delaware River. And so the whole book was about that painting and different parts of the painting. And they're teaching kids to learn phonics patterns through that. So they are really engaging books, and we bought a lot of those to pilot this year. And what I'm hearing is that the teachers like them, the kids like them. So there's also new research coming out on what you do for secondary kids, which all these years as a reading specialist I'd never seen. But in the last couple of years, a lot of researchers have come out with what do you do when they've already hit middle and high school, how do you intervene? So we are really looking into what might be a best fit for our students. But again, our priority is to really make sure that our pre-K, kindergarten, first graders really get that solid literacy and math foundation.
Frank, one of the things that, if you don't mind if I just respond to your question, one of the things that I have appreciated is the board's kind of recognition and support of social emotional learning as being as important as the academic learning pieces. And one of the things that Julie and I were just chatting a little bit about today was, Swanton spent a lot of time this year on PBIS and our universal strategies. And that's great, and that was really important. But next, we have to work on how are we supporting what we might call tier 2 or tier 3 students. Because you can have incredible reading programs, incredible first instruction, incredible math programs, and when a significant behavior occurs in a classroom, the clock stops on that teaching, right? Like one student with a significant behavior can really just disrupt the entire room. So when you ask what can the board do, I think continuing to support the behavior pieces, the social emotional pieces, because that becomes the access point for the academic pieces.
And the last thing I'll say on that is truancy is such a continuing issue. Any talks of bringing back homework?
Well, there is no policy on not having homework. It's up to the teacher's discretion if they give homework or not. The only thing research is saying is don't give homework unless you're going to check it and give feedback to students. Because if you're giving homework and then you're not checking it and they're making mistakes and the teacher hasn't looked at it, they're going to solidify making those mistakes. So teachers are free to give homework. We don't have any policy against it.
I will say, and maybe this came from the Swanson handbook, but a few years ago in Swanson, we spent a full year with teachers going through peer review articles, studying the data, looking at all the work, and over the course of many, many staff meetings, kind of backed off our homework policy because it was practice. Thank you. Just wasn't effective. It just didn't seem all of our work and all the input. So it might be something that we go back and revisit. I know 6th grade kept reading work in there and some reading stuff for 6th grade, but in general with the younger grades, we did kind of peel back on that. And I do a lot on accountability when 10% or less of the class does the homework. What do you do with that? What does that look like? What are you doing with kids that don't? What are you doing for accountability with families? Are there consequences? And So it was just, we did spend a full year on that.
And I think Julie has mentioned this before. Unfortunately, the students who would most benefit from it, their families already have so many other struggles that the kids that we would like to have do some practice at home, they just don't have the structure to be able to do it. So the 10% who are returning homework are the ones who are the good students.
Our parents were keeping their kids up late after soccer practice to do their homework, and it was a battle for them at 9:30 at night, and I would rather have a third grader or a fourth grader in bed at 9:30 personally than working on that. And we do, and every year they have put in more of the courses, especially the AP courses and the sort of advanced coursework. They are.
The one thing I will mention, which I haven't mentioned, is we are going to continue to do full day summer programming, and tutoring is a big part of that. So right now we have, already recruited teachers in our elementary schools who will be providing that tutoring. We changed it last year to a full day with transportation. So literally the kids get picked up at 7:30. They stay in school. They have their tutoring in the morning. They can then be part of Crossroads and enjoy all the other activities. We provide meals, and then they get dropped off at 5 o'clock in the evening. So we are providing that opportunity for any parents who want to take advantage of it. Go ahead.
A couple of things. Between now and the time we start working on the budget next November, can we have an item on our agenda regarding discussion of appropriate homework guidelines? And maybe just revisit it. I don't have any ideas what we might want to do, but it surfaces every once in a while. Maybe it'd be just good to have it on the agenda. People bring in their questions and thoughts. It may not change a thing, but I think that I will tell you that I've had parents tell me in Swanton that Swanton does not require any homework of your child. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. I don't know about the other schools.
Sure.
The other question is probably more relevant. When was the last time that the reading series, I think in elementary schools now, when was the last time you went to a new series?
So the current curriculum that we are using has been in place about 9 years.
10 years?
9-ish. So it's time for a change.
Have you ever seen the research that says a well-trained reading teacher can teach children to read in foreign countries, under educated villages, with paper bags, with just about anything that has literacy in it? A long time ago, International Reading did a big study. People in New Zealand and Australia were in the lead. And I was amazed because as a principal, we just spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get the new GAN or the new whatever. And then we went to this conference and it says, train your teachers, make sure they understand how to teach reading, know what the basic fundamentals you have to have in the first 2 or 3 years, and go from there. But they said schools more often than not go out and spend a lot of money, get a new series, and maybe not properly train people. And I'm not saying that's totally relevant, but I found that very intriguing, that as a principal I was spending money when maybe I didn't have to.
One of the reasons why we are is I completely agree that a well-trained reading teacher can teach anything. I know some of those people very well. And we have high teacher turnover and a high percentage of students who are identified as disabled because we also do not have evidence-based programs in place and materials for teachers to have at their hand. We have spent a lot of the last 9 years training teachers at great expense, and then they don't necessarily stay. So making sure that we do both things, that we have materials while we have our ESSER funds to support the purchase that are highly rated and meet standards, as well as continue to train them highly, I think it is the balance. But I agree with you, and that's not what we face. That's why teacher retention is one of our goals.
I think with homework done, just to follow up on something you said, we want to be cautious about thinking that we can use homework to compensate for missed instruction. So when you think about homework as a remedial strategy for a student not being here or being truant or skipping class or whatever the case may be, they need that first instruction before they can do the homework. So homework may or may not, there isn't tremendous research about homework, but it may or may not help to reinforce skills once they're learned. It may or may not help to support teaching responsibility and other pieces. But for a student who misses 40% of their school year or school time, homework alone is not the answer.
To be honest with you, I don't even see it as a relevant part of it. What I'm looking for is somebody taught me at a very early age I should brush my teeth every day. And I do. And my mother used to make sure that when we went to school, we were clean. And so I kind of try to keep clean. And I've seen it, because I taught preschool for a number of years in the summer, that if you get a 4 or 5 year old that handles a book every day and maybe just tries to decipher the words, it's forming a habit. So that's why I like the idea of homework. If you have 10 minutes of homework when you're in first grade, it's responsibility at times to teach. If you don't get the achievement to make up for absenteeism, to me that's not a significant, well, it's significant, but to me that's not my goal. My goal is to do something, set aside time every day. I see kids all over town that come home and have nothing to do. They want it. And I'd like to take sometimes and get an outdoor classroom, put it on lawn at one of my houses and say, come on over and have a snack and we'll read. And I found that students in junior high love to have somebody read to them, which shocked me when I first started. Anyway, thank you for your statement. I don't disagree, but I want to start changing behavior. That I have something I have to do.
And I wasn't trying to derail with the homework comment. It was more. So I'm not an expert. I don't know it. I'm not trying to go against academic research that's already been done on the subject. It was just more so because I don't think the truancy problem is going to go away. Like there's just going to be kind of a new level of attendance that we're going to have until maybe we're much further removed from COVID. And so it's just more an open question in terms of if truancy doesn't change that much over the next few years, what are we going to do?
What's the intervention?
Because if we're always saying we need to improve truancy, to improve the grades, to improve the proficiency, but in all reality, maybe truancy won't ever drop below a certain level, then what's the approach? That's really the question that I was trying to get at, and then I just threw homework. So, but that's really what I'm asking because
Or teacher retention.
if
If teacher retention doesn't change and we continuously lose new teachers,
you add that to the fact that people are going to continue into next year to stay home if they're not feeling good or have a cough or a cold, and parents will be out of work. So there's like a baseline of like attendance may never recover to like where we need it to be to like. So if it's always tied truancy to proficiency, that's where I'm just like, what are the other alternatives? That's really what I'm.
That's a really great point, and the conversations that we're having are about the kids and the circumstances we have just now. We always plan for better circumstances and prepare the way for that and have strategies, but we also need to think of the levels of intensity of intervention that we have, whether it's math, behavior, reading, and how we look at our resources so that we can provide what kids need in order for them to grow. Yes, thank you.
And you make a really good point, because if these trends continue, our only option is to make sure every minute the child is in school, we are providing the best instruction we can. That's the only remedy, because despite building all these systems of support, if there are still barriers for that family to send their child to school for whatever reason, we've just got to make sure we are using high quality material, that we have very well prepared teachers, And the idea of buying a program is it provides that consistency across grade levels. So we are going to keep trying and keep reading what the research is telling us and responding to these trends. Hopefully some of them will get reversed as we move forward, and if not, we've just got to work with what we have. But we got to keep that optimism and hope that things will get better.
One more, John. I heard something tonight, I think I've heard 4 or 5 times this year. And when I first heard it, I kind of threw it off. But apparently we have a pretty high rate of teacher absenteeism.
Yes.
So maybe that's a topic that sometime we need to discuss. When I first heard it, I thought, well, maybe it's one of the schools, maybe it's just the time of year. But I've heard it multiple times. And I guess I'm saying if you don't have a high quality teacher in the classroom, then I can see why kids skip school, skip class. I can see why they don't achieve. So if you take a student misses 10 days and his teacher misses 10 days
Right.
or more, I mean, some kids, why would I even come anymore? So, anyway, maybe it's not a good topic, but I'm just hearing it too much.
It's an interesting topic and one that we discuss a lot.
I'd love to hear Bonnie do a presentation sometime on that, on employee
But
absenteeism.
a student missing 10 days and a teacher missing 10 days, that's a month of instruction. Yeah, when you think about 20 days where they're not together in a classroom, that's a month of instruction.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, that goes into the contractual issues too.
Right, of course, people are entitled to their contractual leave time.
Right,
We do
yes.
have incentives in place for
Yeah.
people not to use all their leave. And people are entitled to it. And being in school is better than not in school, whether it's the teacher or the kid. So I think we've talked about that before, about sharing that data, but it would need to be aggregate data so
Oh,
that
yeah,
it's not identifiable.
Because it's highly confidential.
It is, but yeah.
And I'm sure you can't break it down like this, but it'd be interesting to know absentee rate by teachers the first 5 years, the last 10 years or something like that, to see if it changes. Or if it's just a personal thing, that some people come.
Right. So Jen, how would you like me to move forward? Because it is 7:35 almost. And I have 2 pieces to share. Do you want me to move through them fairly quickly and let people know that the data is there for them to look at? What piece? Or I can just start and we'll see how it goes.
I'll more focus on the data because it is in our drive. To take a further look at it. If everybody's good with that.
Has everybody seen that on the drive?
For the outcome, the survey, yes.
I will go through it, but I'm not going to take
Read every
read
slide.
every slide. If that's all right, and people stop me with questions, of course. I will point out, the full survey was like 39 different slides, so I put that as a link. It's in your drive. If anybody wants a hard copy emailed, I can do that easily. Because it is interesting, it's students took that survey last week, so it is fresh with what their plans are, and it exactly mirrors the VSAC state survey that happens.
That's the one they took when they handed in their.
Yes, exactly. So again, this year, 68% of seniors completed it, which is better than last year, which was only 58%. We really want to try to get up to 85% of seniors completing the survey. And a couple of questions that I thought were important to point out is my high school provided the guidance needed to reach my goals. We have a lot of kids who hit neutral. I will tell you something, whenever there's a survey, we get a lot of kids who hit neutral. But at least that is showing that they're not feeling negatively about it. But we had a good percentage of people who agreed and strongly agreed that they received support. And you heard from the guidance team and the VSAC last month about the work that they're engaged in with really, it's only gonna get more and more from here on out. And then my high school helped me learn the skills I need to be successful in work and college. Again, we had stronger than last year responses in either neutral or grade versus the disagrees kind of went down. And again, it's year to year with half the kids last year. Information about continuing education, we had stronger support there, people identifying that the school supported further education, giving information, and that seems to be improving as well. Here is also an interesting one. You can see this is students reporting on their families' higher education, not finishing high school, families in our community who have a high school diploma, some college, 2-year college, 4-year college, masters or more, and don't know. I found it interesting the numbers of kids who didn't know whether their parents went to college or not, but that was their answer. Pretty consistent from year to year. Highest level of education plan, so what the seniors are planning for themselves. High school, a certificate, but not a 2-year kind of certificate. An apprenticeship that's formal, 2-year college, 4-year college, masters or more, and not to sell.
Pretty big jump in 4-year college.
Yes, and of course that vacillates from year to year. But we're starting to collect the data with the same questions so that we can perhaps see that shift over time. Here, and this is a little tricky to read, so I encourage you to read it online so you can maybe see a little better, break it up. But you can see this is last year, this year, and the state average. What people plan to do next year. The blue here is attend school next year. The red next to it is attend school and work. So if you combine those two, we're doing pretty well. The yellow is the number of students, I think it's pretty similar to the year past, identified a formal apprenticeship they're going into. The green is straight work. We had joined the military, we had no one last year, and we had 7 students this year. Take care of family was 1 student each year. Take time off, gap year, to me that's the same thing, but 2 separate questions on the VSAC survey. And then don't know work like, college likely or don't know work likely, were small numbers. But you can see that the work and going to school is improving from one year to the next.
Quick question.
Absolutely.
So the going to, is there a question that says like, if they're gonna go to a trade school or go into a trade, or does that fall under apprenticeship, or does that fall under?
Apprenticeship, yes, or a certificate program.
Yeah, is that defined to them so that they?
The certificate back on one of those, and some people still, which would mean they want to continue their education.
Right, they might be going to get an LNA certificate or one of those, a phlebotomy certificate, right? So you have to go to adult education, you have to take a formal test. Those, even a CDL is it's not a 2-year program, it's not a formal apprenticeship, but it is training.
I'm just kind of, I'd be curious to know if it spells it out for them so that they're not stating the question or just saying something different and it's not clear to them that it counts as a CDL license or going to a welding. Because a welding program is 8 months. Some students might not consider that getting it.
They may not, right?
So
here's the
Or you might be able to put in parens, when you put out some examples on something like that. Most people
Well,
would
we
say,
can in our survey, but the VSAC survey is not in our control, so we're trying to copy the VSAC survey so that the data is consistent from year to year, but Yes, I think you're right. I think that oftentimes students don't understand that welding certificate they're going for would count as this thing. And again, we want to get all our students scoring more. It's 68%, which is an improvement, but we want to get a higher number. Let's see. Do you have a job lined up after high school? 62% said yes, and another 10+% said yes, part-time. The most important reason you decided to work, and these questions were for students who are saying they're not going to college or fall. That, you know, wanting to work to support themselves or needing to work to support themselves were definitely the biggest answer. Joining the military was one response as well. But by far, either needing or wanting to support themselves was the determining factor for most students. Choosing to work right after.
Sorry.
Yep.
I saw in there, they can't afford to continue their education.
That didn't seem to show
Okay,
up.
I just wanted to
Nope.
make sure. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I tried to represent the ones that showed. If you plan to enroll in a school or certificate program in the future, which of the following best describes your job training or educational plans might be? A third were undecided. So I think, you know, we talk a lot about informing students. We talked about how as a community, even families don't know about the jobs that are out there, or the training to get certain high-paying manufacturing jobs or other. We need to do a better job of informing the community and families as well as students about the options that are out there. And it's not like any second grader says, I want to be a fabricator, or be a machinist, unless someone in their family does it and they say, oh, well, that looks like a good job. But for the most part, we need to, and we've been talking a lot about the need to push lower in the grades with specific experiences for kids to see. Some represented a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree as options for themselves. So those are good examples. For students who are attending school in the fall, indicate where you're most likely to attend. The majority were 4-year, 47.9 were 4-year, 14% were 2-year college. Then, I don't know the percentage, but the orange there is the 2-year college, then to transfer, because there's a really nice program where if you go to one of the state CCDs, for example, you do 2 years toward an associate's degree, and if you perform well, then you transfer completely to a 4-year state university, and you're accepted, and it saves a great deal of money for families and students. So that's a good option. We're seeing more kids take advantage of. And then about 14% said technical business or other trades as an option. And students who are going into a more formal trade training were choosing going to school for next year as opposed to just going to work. So there's a little crossover. And do you plan to work when you attend school? 35, almost 36% said yes. Another 15 said yes, they plan to work full time. And then yes, I plan to work part-time, less than 20 hours. So the majority of our kids by far, 85%, are working while they're in school. And again, the full report with all of the answers are there. I took the data from this year's survey, I took the report from VSAC. Luckily it had numbers in it, not just percentages, and where I was able to, I created some side-by-side comparisons. But I think, know that this is an area of focus for NVU in particular, but also focusing on increasing awareness at the elementary levels too, and certainly making investments workforce investment folks and working with the Unbound program to connect kids to employers and job shadows and pieces like that. So we're continuing to work and hoping to see the trend. So the next thing, I think it's quiet, so I'm going to close that, okay?
Any questions? Comments?
So, Bonnie, if you want to do this piece and I'll move the slides along?
Sure. So it's not a lot to go into, so we can move along pretty quickly, but we had, we put out an anonymous survey for people to complete, for teachers to complete when they are leaving the district to help us in our teacher retention data. And then I am also doing in-person interviews, because sometimes people say different things anonymously than they will do in person to me. We didn't have the responses that I hoped. We have a little bit more than half of our people leaving have completed it. And so we asked the questions, how long have you been working here? Or which school have you been working in? How long have you worked in this role? So that's a good indicator of how long people are staying or leaving. What type of position that you hold, whether it was voluntary, involuntary, or retiring. And then the reasons for leaving is the biggest part. So inadequate salary in comparison to other districts was.
Can you go back just on that one?
Sure.
I know everybody wants to. Okay, so retiring is a very small.
Yeah, we actually only had 3 retirements this year. And we do have a few involuntary leaving, not because, you know, of like discipline or something like that, but because of people not having their licenses and things that we were unable to issue a contract until they approved a license, a teaching license to us. They were unable to do so. They received a letter stating that they were not going to be renewed. None of them filled this survey out.
Do you know on that one? I'm sorry, but I don't mind if you extra minutes to get information. Those who were leaving, were they going to another school? Or they going to another type of job?
So that's what, if you go the next slide.
Oh, it's on the next one, okay.
Yeah, if you go down,
Okay.
oh yeah, future employment is down below this one. So this one, so we do have future employment next. This one is main reasons for leaving. Inadequate salary in comparison is still the highest reason for people to leave. Family, personal reasons, and dissatisfaction with school culture are the main reasons that people indicate that they're leaving. And they can indicate more than one. So in this section, we do check all that apply. Relocation, end of temporary contract, nobody selected, retirement, overlong commute to work. That's something people really are looking at more now since the pandemic than they used to.
How many could they pick?
I'm sorry.
How many could they pick?
As many as they wanted.
Oh.
So it wasn't
They
check
could
all
pick
that.
all of them.
It could be, you know, my drive is long and
Okay.
salary is higher in Chittenden County, for example. Be an easy one to pick too.
I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear that.
It is.
Thank you.
But the main reasons that people are choosing are family, personal reasons, inadequate salary, and dissatisfaction with school culture. The next slide is the future employment. So over half have accepted a teaching position in another Vermont district. The next percentage have not selected another position at all. And we have more people this year than I've seen leaving education. So we have about 16% that are leaving, just leaving education altogether. Yeah.
Nationally, that's even bigger.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's the most that I've seen being here, but it's not surprising given given overall the number of people being educated.
Is it kind of like a combination of all the reasons, like pay and work and
It's hard work. One of the things when we talk about culture, people talk about behavior and how hard that is. And pay. So you put that together and I'm thinking of an individual who is going to do what I consider a very boring job online, remotely, doing data entry kinds of stuff that is, going to pay more and not have any of the challenges that a career such as education. But one is a career and one is just a job.
And this kind of ties in because I did have somebody really ask me, what's the average class size for like the elementaries?
They're fairly small, they're like, it depending, they get progressively larger somewhat as kids get older. The education quality standards look for 20 for K2, K3, and then up to 25 in older grades. We stay around the 20, 15 to 20.
And that starts like K2?
Yeah. But, Swanton, for example, has a lot of kids. So we have 4 or 5 classrooms per grade. And if kids move in, they may be a little higher. But we don't have high class sizes. 22 is about as high as 22. And nationally, that's low. And Vermont has low
So
class
nationally
sizes.
that's low compared.
30 or more is very common across the country. Vermont has invested in small class sizes.
A little side note, my 3 grandchildren in Virginia went to Fairfax, Virginia schools, and it was not unusual to have 28, 31, 32 in their elementary classrooms.
Absolutely.
So,
And the research is clear that it doesn't make a difference in student outcomes, how small the class size is. And I know every teacher I've ever met or spoken to says it absolutely makes a difference in health. So,
Bonnie, is there any way at the top, except in the teaching position by the Vermont district, to break that out? I mean, are most of our people even here to go to Chittenden County? Or maybe they're going to Brattleboro because they have relatives in there? I mean, certainly we don't want to get into knowing names, but if all of those people are going 35 miles south of here, then we know about the issue.
This one was anonymous, so I don't have a way to follow up with this one. I am conducting in-person exit interviews, and one of my questions is, tell me about your new opportunity. So I can probably come up with more data based on that.
I also, when we talk about some of the teachers that are leaving, I think it's a wide scope, but Chris and I have talked about how shocking it is to think that we worldwide, there are teachers who their student teaching was virtual. So now they have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and are stepping foot in a classroom and teaching for the first time in their professional job, because when they were of age or of the right level in college for student teaching, it was virtual learning or A and B days. And just kind of seeing that for some teachers, it's like definitely soft. That's a really good point. This year, with my interviews of all the new teachers, is the first year in a few years that teachers are telling me about their student teaching that was in a school. And I casually worked that into my question. So, where did your student teach? And last year and the year before, it was online or hybrid. And some teachers did really well in generalizing that knowledge, and other teachers, I think, are realizing that in-person teaching is part of the thing. Maybe we're trained to do.
Interesting.
Some of our new teachers this year too, I think, speaks to our sub shortage in the area, because they're like, well, I was supposed to be student teaching, but really it's now a long-term sub role. So I've had a number of them that are like, well, I'm figuring it out as I go along, where they maybe were supervised for a short period of time, but then ended up taking over a classroom. So they'll be a little more prepared next year.
I know, a little bit. I'm trying. So here's our bottom line slide as far as the numbers. I add this.
So this was part of, I think it was the first meeting in May. I had put kind of a presentation in the board folder of our retention data and what it looked like by school. And in that information, Don had asked them about support staff retention and things like that. So I had that in there. But Julie pulled this out to include it in here to see where we're at retention wise from this year to last year.
We're at 83% this year, District 5 as opposed to 71 last year. So it's improving slowly.
Quick question. On the one with the, when you did the survey, the main reasons for the position, you did the graphs, and the one with the dissatisfaction with the school culture, is there like little comments sections so they can elaborate on, what exactly did they not like about the culture?
Yes, there is a comment section, but it's not something to pull out. And a lot of the comments I felt were very identifiable. The person, maybe not to everybody, but if it was something that we were to publish here, it could be identifiable. So I think we're going to work to feed the information to make sure that it's not something that can be identified.
Right.
Behavior is something that
Student behavior.
Can we go back and look at slide number 3, how long we've worked in this role?
So you can see 2 to 3 years was about 30%, and 16, almost 17% in their first year.
Almost done.
So that's like 46%
In their first 3 years.
in the first 3 years. So that's huge, because basically your teacher, it doesn't mean it's their first year teaching, but it's their first year in that position. And so there's a learning curve for them as well, right? And training for us to get them to there. And if we're constantly turning those teachers over,
Yes.
that's so I'd be, I know you can't see that from this, but I'd be curious what those that 46%, what the reason for them leaving is. It because they're just starting out and then they can move to Chittenden County, to another district, is it to travel, that kind of stuff, because that's really, to me, where we need to improve, is to try to keep teachers longer.
One, we need to make sure that our behavioral systems are solid so that new teachers, not that they're not going to have challenges managing student behavior, and every new teacher does, but we want to make sure that the responses, that the climate is positive. And every school in the country is struggling with this, certainly in Franklin County, every school is struggling with this. And we've worked together. The next part, though, is very true, Peter. Anecdotally, what we've heard for years, and that's why it's great that we're collecting this data, is that we train teachers really well here, and then they go to CVU after their second or third year.
It's not the first time we've said that.
No, but it's true.
This seems to be the issue, that
It is.
they come here because they don't have a lot of experience. They
First
come here, do a great job training them,
Exactly.
and within the first 1 to 4 years, they're gone to go back to Chittenden County and get a slightly higher salary after training. So what do we do about it?
There are some schools in Chittenden County that won't hire first-year teachers. They really don't do that, where they come knowing that they're making their way back because they can go back and up to first.
Is there like a contractual thing or something?
Training ground, that's what I call it, or training ground.
They don't need to, because they have, it's not a slight difference in pay between here and, say, Essex or Champlain School Districts. It's a significant difference.
Like 10?
Chittenden, 10 is just going to St. Albans. It's sometimes there's a lot of variables because it depends on what their master agreement says about new teacher placement on the salary schedule. But they're, again, a statewide teacher contract is really, it wouldn't have, that would take years for everyone to get to a certain level. But really, that's the only time you're not gonna have that inequity. I mean, we do pretty well compared to other, Chittenden County is close to us, so that's part of the challenge. If you're in North Country, those folks aren't leaving to go to Chittenden County. But they don't, they can't fill teaching jobs at all in those places.
Well, I just think it should be maybe like something we really discuss that, maybe we can't control someone going back to Essex, but if they're going to BFA, we have to close that gap as much as possible.
We try. I
think we
that
can
superintendent asked me.
If you were here 3 or 4 years ago, there was a big disparity. And I think we've done a good job. Bonnie certainly has come in with some ideas, and the last couple of negotiations have gone well. So I think this would be something that'd be interesting to work on. We could work every week, month, and talk about that. We are going to, but.
So a lot of this, when I look through the people that I know that are leaving that fit into that category of the 1 to 3 year range and stuff, there's a lot of things that we can't always control. Part of it being that when people are fresh out of college, they maybe are still in the apartment they were in when they were in college. Some of them, they get married, they relocate to different areas, they look for jobs closer to home, they have children, and then they want to be in the school district their children are in, and I don't believe there are a large amount of those people just jumping ship because they're going to make more. A lot of it feels circumstantial to me. I did have people share with me that we were closing that gap financially, that they did feel like for newer teachers in the lower salary steps that we're really not that far off from some of the Chittenden County schools now. So I know that, it is, when we just look straight at the data without attaching a body to it, it feels like, and maybe that's something we can work on next year, is diving down into the questions, a deep dive into the questions, or maybe what's your main reason for leaving, or, do a 1, 2, 3, what's your main reason for leaving. But there are not, I believe out of this whole list, there are maybe 2 teachers I know of that are going to other Franklin County schools, and not because of pay, and not in the less than 5-year range.
So, what we wanted to do is our admin team's been talking about our goals for next year. Julie can't on Zoom all of a sudden. Okay. So we wanted to not make a decision now, but just preview what our recommendations for goals for next year. And I've already heard from several board members that we didn't want to change anything radically, but we wanted to look at this data and then be able to share a rationale around the next goals. In particular, our student achievement, as Coach has shared, we set purposely high bar and we made some movement there, but we did not reach it. So we wanted to keep those proficiency levels as our goal again. Post-secondary outcomes, we want to continue to be looking at those, and I haven't heard anything from the board that they want to change that. We're looking at what students say for data, but I also think that we can be collecting, for instance, that rubric that the aspirations person from VSAC shared us. We should also probably be reporting out on any change is MVU improving and the information they're sharing. Like that, that would reflect as well. And then our retention of educational and professional staff. What I wanted to suggest is that we look at attendance or we look at our SEL. So they're both things that we measure in our continuous improvement plan. And we have SEL Web, which is an assessment that our students started taking this year, as well as our Swiss data, bless you here.
Thank you.
Which is our behavioral referral data. So for social emotional well-being of students, because we talk a lot about behavior, how well students are functioning affectively is very important in terms of access to learning. So we would actually want to look at our skills with SEL Web, our students doing well with their skills, and then looking at reduction in behavioral referrals. So looking at both things as possible. So I think, Jen, we talked about the plan for the board is to maybe make a decision around this in August. Probably both meetings to talk about them a little more in depth, but I wanted to make sure that the board had those to look at and think about between now and then, since we just did a big data dump. Okay.
Julia, are those shared in the drive for us?
Absolutely. They're linked to the agenda, and that document may not yet be in the drive, but it is linked to the agenda.
Because I click on it, there's nothing there.
It's probably not there if you say it isn't. I haven't done it.
Probably have
yet.
an old version of it.
Peter's got it.
It is in there.
Ah. Fail. It's a basket block, you can't think.
Yeah. I don't think it's in the drive.
So we have that for discussion, both meetings in August, and do finalization last. So, last one.
Perfect.
Next agenda item is HR items for action for professional hires.
Okay, we have two for today. And I was trying to move it into the drive so I lost track. First teacher we are hiring is Jennifer Dewing. Jennifer Dewing has been a preschool teacher and is going to retire and has chosen not to retire, so we are offering her a contract next year.
That's good news.
That was not very public, but she wanted to, she was just sort of making up her mind.
Julie, what did you say she'll be doing?
Preschool teacher in Franklin, she has been for
Oh,
many
yeah.
years. She was gonna retire, but she's
She's
not
gonna stay
going.
on it? Okay, I thought maybe she wanted to go to first grade.
No, she did. And the new teacher is Natalie Chauvin, who will be a health teacher at MVU.
Anybody like to make a motion to accept the two professional hires?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Peter.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joy. Any discussion? All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And we are going to do a leave request in executive session.
Right, we need to make a finding that's appropriate, and it would be due to the personal nature, put the employee at a substantial disadvantage.
And then D, we moved down to the approval of the minutes for the June 6th meeting.
We got a retirement
We have a
resignation.
retirement.
Oh,
There's a
sorry.
notice, Jamie Dodd, who's been an English teacher at MVU for quite a while, is one of our teachers who is leaving education. So, we don't need a motion for that, but we are releasing him from his contracts because he's not teaching centers.
And we don't need a motion.
Because they're not, well,
They're not going to another school district.
usually we do.
Usually do, just because he had signed his contract.
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think it's fine, Jess.
All right.
But I'm just.
So you signed his contract. somebody like to make the motion for the retirement resignation?
I'll make a motion that we accept James Dodd's resignation.
Thank you, Peter. Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Don. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Now we'll have the approval of the minutes from June 6th. Don, did you get a chance to review those?
I move the minutes be approved.
I'll second it.
Don makes the motion, Peter seconds it. Is there any discussion or changes?
I just want to mention why I appreciate the delay. I couldn't find them tonight or today. But there was one thing I was looking to make sure was in the minutes and it was there. So.
Thank you, Don. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
I'll abstain.
Abstain? Okay, motion carries 6-0-1.
Here, you were on the hot seat and that we do, but it was something that we asked and it did get in the minutes.
Success.
Megan's not here,
That's right.
but we did meet. And we talked about the work in student behavior that's been going on at MU all year, so Tammy presented there. And then Jen Sorber presented information on the input from the middle level portrait of breath.
Who's on that committee?
Kelly, Joanne, Devin, and Megan.
And who?
Megan.
Oh, Megan.
And me, and Kosha, and Jen Sorber, and Christy, probably Chris Dodge, although he doesn't know it.
So, training, Manning, Joanne, and Peter. Just a question, has everybody, I just wanted to ask a question, has everybody turned in their survey?
No.
We're missing 2 board members, and I think somebody was slipped a paper copy of the survey today. That was Joanne's request.
You might do a survey on the paper.
I can't hear you.
Peter, talk to Dawn.
Did you get the survey?
Yeah, I got the survey.
Okay.
Put it out online.
You did?
Oh.
Yes, I did.
Okay. We're good.
Maybe it's there now.
Thank you.
Double check.
Maybe I didn't send it, maybe I just filled it out. I'll tell you
They
what
gave you a
happened.
paper version.
I'll tell you what happens on these surveys. Many times I want to put in a comment and sometimes my computer will accept the comment, sometimes it doesn't, so I move on and then it pulls up, but I did. This has been around for a while, like weeks, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ask Joanne, I'm really good about getting a survey and it's when I see them, I do them. But I'll do
But
it
we
again.
don't see what you've done.
No, but you sent out a survey, we responded by now.
So, yes, to my email, you did. Thank you.
No, I'll do it again, help me do it again? Well,
I'll resend you the link in case.
that's
I'll
okay.
double check before I send you the link.
Wait, that means that Dawn would count twice then.
No, because it's
That would skew everything.
It's your name.
I think
it's
she
collecting your email, so I know who's
I
filled
will
out.
tell you, I didn't rate us very highly.
Save it for the retreat.
There is a way for a comment.
Maybe you were better if you did get it.
No, we want it.
So I mean, we just need one?
Follow-up email to the
Megan.
other board members that put in, if you just don't mind them to get them.
Everybody else did it? Good.
As of today, we still have one other person who is doing the best they can. We've got a couple people underwater in their jobs right now. And they're aware of it. We're thinking.
So Peter and I would just like to confirm the time. So is board meeting at 5 or 5:30? And then retreat. So we just want to confirm the time that we're starting. Oh, to the board. Which
Oh, I thought we did confirm it last time.
okay, it's just I thought I had seen 5:30 at the Abbey.
I thought we confirmed that the board meeting was at 5.
5. Okay.
And then
Because you don't need
the
the
retreat
full-
started at 5:30.
Perfect.
So work through dinner
Yes.
retreat.
So, and that brings, the next question is, would it be okay if people actually ordered ahead of time? Maybe Julia should ask you that question. Would you be comfortable submitting our orders prior? Because I think if we have a meeting, then at 5:30 we order, we probably won't
Right.
get our food till 6:30. I mean, especially a group of 10, it's gonna take a little bit of time.
Why don't you work with Jerry on that?
Absolutely.
And she can see what you would like us to do.
Okay, I can do
Because we
that.
will be just ordering off the menu.
Yep.
But sometimes they want to give you the menu ahead of time or a limited menu. I mean, it's not like there's 20 of us, but
I will
I'm sure
do
it'll
that.
be fun. So,
Perfect.
yeah, Jerry can figure that piece out.
So, yeah, Peter,
That's 5 o'clock then.
5 o'clock,
The board meeting at 5.
So,
The retreat's at, well, can you just adjust, so I have my calendar right now, I have the calendar you sent out, it's in at 6. I think it's in at 6 now.
Bless you. I think I just took that board meeting and I just moved it over a day.
Okay.
I didn't make any.
It's
So
like,
I will do it and then you will all get a
Okay,
calendar
great,
update thing.
okay.
You don't have to send me.
I have it in
Exactly.
both ways.
I'll do it now. Thank you, Peter, because I wouldn't have noticed at all.
so
Sometimes you get blind.
lastly, Peter and I are meeting again next Monday. So anything that you would like to send back to us or reply back, because I don't think I've heard from you, Jen, as far as goals.
As far as what?
Goals. You said you were traveling. I'll take a look at it later. I'll get back to you. It's okay. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, and then I thought when I get back.
It's okay.
Did everybody send their goals, comments in? To help
Can you
Peter
send me
and Joanne?
Email, so
I will.
when I look at it tomorrow morning, first thing, I'll
Yes.
have it.
Absolutely.
Charlie,
We've got 2 or 3, right?
Yes. Got some comments.
You don't have to send anything, just if you want something specific. Yeah.
No, on this,
Yeah.
on
I
this.
don't do these when I'm in that office.
It's easy,
I
yeah.
get 50 emails a day. Well, more
I haven't, you know, I
this is true.
wasn't happy to.
This one, I don't get more than 2 to 3 a day, so I'm not often. Some of these questions are really
Should go quick.
I don't like this. I like this. But I did, this is one here.
Caregiver, but.
Its components including adherence to agreed protocols, processes, and processes. I don't know what the hell protocols and processes are going to. We discuss them now. It's agreed to them in minutes, procedures, I don't know. Yes, some of them we do, some of them we never talk.
Yeah,
Right. But I do like surveys that let you put comments.
yeah, we did get comments, so that's good.
Perfect. Future agenda items is the board retreat next month. A small meeting at 5.
And just to be clear, like, I know there's some board members that can't show up at 5.
Right.
So whoever can show up.
Show up.
So we have a quorum.
So there's a quorum, and then start the retreat at 5:30, right?
Yep. Yes.
And we're going to 9 o'clock, going to 9.
Look at here.
10 o'clock.
Usually we have a projected end time on everything.
Yes, we will. Yes.
We'll have a projected end time.
Absolutely.
Will it be in the same day or? I'm just trying to look at my work schedule.
I'd just like to say though, with the retreat, my feeling is that we may have more to say that we can't get in our time frame. I'm personally not opposed to having another retreat, maybe even at the high school, 3 months down the road to finish everything if we don't feel we've completed what we wanted to complete in this one.
Good point.
That's,
We should let time control a good.
I mean, you can say we got more to go, then
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, like we try to come up with some open questions just to get us started, maybe during the meal even, we'll open it up. We talked about it for a half hour, so it's like, we're gonna have to rein it in, right? And then get
Or
into
we'll
the,
table things.
yeah,
And be like,
Yeah.
at our next retreat.
yeah,
But make that retreat within this year. I think, would
Absolutely.
yeah.
be beneficial to the board.
September, October, we usually don't quite have quite as much as we do once we start budgeting.
So we'll have the time, we'll just say what, 8 p.m.?
Well, so
The Addie
we,
closes at 9.
yeah, we're trying to stop, we're trying to end at 8:30, but we definitely set a hard stop at 9 o'clock.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna make sure that,
Thank you guys.
if the last stuff on.
So the retreat, future, as you know, is July 12th at, fix that.
Well, the retreat's
Well,
at
the
5.
retreat's at, I think it's at 5, retreat's at 5:30. So,
Yes. Yeah.
Alright, does somebody like to make a motion?
Gonna make the motion to
Go into
Executive
session.
You're so close, Frank.
Wow. Usually I'm the pushy one and you're just like,
Executive session.
would somebody like to make a motion to go into executive session, for the retirement resignation, employee leave of absence,
I'll make the motion.
inviting Julie and Bonnie.
I make the motion to go to executive session for the employee resignation of Julie Bond.
Thank
Employee
you,
leave of
Ren.
absence.